whether you went that far or not, you put yourself on the line. For whatever reason, but you put yourself on the line, and then to come back and it not work out for you the way it should is kind of a tragedy. But for me, to be able to be a part of something, a company that really paves the way in helping not just vets but anyone kind of get their life back on track, or be a part of society the way they should be is pretty awesome.
Are you all mic'd up and ready to go?
Yeah.
Come on.
Sweet.
Hey man, thanks for joining us on Whiskey Wednesday.
Thanks for having me.
It's a super basic episode. Basic, gosh, what a terrible word. It's just a simple episode. Show, we literally just share a glass or two of whiskey and talk to interesting people with interesting stories.
Sweet. Well, thanks for having me.
Oh, that Woodford Reserve, man, never gets old.
Oh, it's such a good one.
So, Justin, one of our other producers, he and I kind of created this show just trying to talk to cool people, get new stories, new perspectives of kind of everybody who's kind of going through life. Our show's taking a direction that we didn't really foresee, kind of getting more directed. But Justin knew you. You've worked on a show. You still do film. You still do editing, all that kind of stuff. Can you tell us a little bit about where you started, how you got into this, and some projects you've done?
It's origin story. I basically, kind of like most people, the moment I had access to a camera, I immediately fell in love. I wanted to go, excuse me.
Start over.
I wanted to go out and film stuff and see what I can do. I'm from the age where a lot of video content was sort of on the rise. I'm not that young, but it was still when I was growing up. So the moment I can get my hands on a camera, I was just let me see what I can do. I played soccer all my life, so I was like, all right, well, let me try to film some stuff with that, see what I can do. I skateboarded, went to the park.
Skateboarding videos, all that stuff.
Yeah, all that jazz. And then when it came down to going to college,
kickflip, bro.
Yeah, you get put it to some nice tunes, and it would be a killer video. And then when it came down to going to college, I'm like, all right, well, what am I doing? So I was like, all right, well, I like art, and I like doing stuff with a camera. I went to Chico State.
Dude, I was just sharing stories of my time in Chico with Justin right before we were on the camera.
Nice.
For a totally different time. So you're at Chico State doing video stuff?
Yeah, I actually started off as a graphic designer. I went in first 2 years. I was like, all right, this is cool, but I was also it was one of those things where I don't know if it was just my the directors of the program or anything, or my professors. They were just like, all right, well, here's what I did. Do the same and maybe switch it up. I'm like, I don't know how you did that. So I very much found myself all right, well, I'm not succeeding. And
this was in video editing and stuff.
This was still graphic design. I was doing my video stuff on the side. Didn't really see financially. I was like, I'll probably make money as a graphic designer more than doing anything video wise. So went in graphic design, and then sort of didn't really like it. Decided to pivot. One of the majors that was part of Chico State's program was to do. It's called media arts, which is film and media production. So I was like, all right, well, cool. A bunch of my classes still count, so I'm not going I'm not starting over
from square one.
Yeah. So I decided to go that route, and then kind of just went all in, and it was pretty awesome. Everyone in my major, we were all collaborating on different projects. I was actually just with a buddy this weekend where we did each other's short films.
That's cool.
Where when you're in the class, you get asked to make a short film. You're like, okay, well, who am I going to get to act? I'm like, oh, it's other people interested. So we're all in each other's films, which is funny because looking back at it and seeing, you cringe at like how trash you're.
What you used to do and where you're at now, you're
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, whatever.
Yeah,
Put
yeah,
that out there.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I've come so far, which is nice, but it's also funny to look back at those.
Yeah.
So yeah, I pretty much did studied that, finished up, and then once I finished at Chico, I was like, all right, well, let me move back home, save some money.
Before you left school, did any of those projects you collaborated on turn into anything, or any of those guys make it to where you've helped work on some of those projects? Make it, I mean, like, I'm not necessarily saying like massive dudes in Hollywood, but just like work on something cool where they're like, hey, we need you.
So a few of the projects that I got to work on like in not necessarily for my classes, but some of the internships I did, they were featured quite a bit on as part of like the entire school's like social media pages and stuff like that. Some of the work. One of the companies that I worked for, or that I that my company worked for, was diversity and inclusion, kind of a part of campus. Mm-hmm. So it was. I made a short film for them to sort of highlight how diverse Chico State actually was, because on paper it looked very not like me, which was funny because
more like me.
When I was trying to come up with the project, because the previous versions of what they had put out were just like faces of like, oh yeah, a bunch of different faces, like, yeah, our school is diverse. Yeah. Like, oh, okay, cool.
Great job.
Great job. I wanted to do something a little bit different, so I sort of choreographed this whole sort of arc of a character, and then when it came down to filming, I was like, all right, well, who do I know that's diverse? And I like looked around, I'm token brown friend.
Like, oh, I'm in front of the camera now.
Yeah. So it turned out I had to get one of my buddies, also in my major, to film, and I was the main actor. So I was sort of directing myself, and the video ended up being so good apparently that the school picked it up and wanted to showcase it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I was like,
especially
all right.
when you're a student there, and they're like, we want your project.
I was like, okay, well, I'm graduating soon. Do you want to give me a job? And they're like, oh, we're good.
No, it's not that good.
Yeah.
We just want to feature it, but we don't want.
Yeah, we just hired someone else. I was like, okay, cool. So I moved back. Like many of us.
It's like a backhanded compliment.
Yeah. It was great. It was.
That's so messed up, man.
Yeah, I was like, cool, and I gave you guys money.
Yeah,
we're good.
Oh, I paid for this college, and you took my stuff.
Yeah, you didn't take any of my loans away.
You just steal from me.
Yeah, I still pay my loans. But it was fun to do and fun to see. Regardless, it was nice to be a part of something like that.
Yeah.
And
so
then,
this is like a feather in your cap.
Yeah. And then once I finished up, I moved back here to my dad, and I was like on the hunt like everyone else. And I was a week away from moving down to LA to do the natural move.
Do you have a job or anything like that, or were you just going to go?
I was just going to do it. I was just going to, a few of my buddies were from there, so they moved out there already. And they're like, we have room.
We have a couch, man. Come on.
We have a couch. Or we have a, thankfully some had like a room available. So I was like, all right, well, Dad, help me.
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah. But right before that, my cousin-in-law connected me with my then boss, who created a TV show up here, a reality show that's sort of like Cops, but it was here in our area.
Was it better than Cops?
I like to think so. I had a little pizzazz to it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. A little shine.
Far behind the camera, making such good edits and, I don't know, quick cuts, and music, and
suspense. You know, you really thought like, oh shit, like
it's going down.
A lot goes on. So yeah, I started working here, and it was kind of funny to, because I mean, growing up, you don't really. I told my dad this. I said thank you because I saw nothing. And granted, I was like, I didn't always live here. I was back and forth between my parents' house. But I told him, I'm like, dude, I didn't see any of what I'm editing.
Yeah.
Because you see what our department has to go through, and it's kind of wild.
Yeah, and I work in law enforcement, so I know that they do a really good job of keeping that that life, that I don't know, almost evil, the sin, the negative parts of society, a lot of times out of view of most people. And they don't know how bad it really is. And if they want to rip the curtain away, I think they're going to be in for quite a big surprise. Maybe as you're sitting there like, oh, I grew up here, there's not a lot of stuff going on, and you're editing a video, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, that happened. I know right where that is. Like, pass there all the time.
It was definitely one of those things where I, obviously like anyone else, and like, oh, why do you want to work here? I was like, because I need a job, because I need to make money. But I was kind of on that boat where, I'm like, it's Placerville. What's going on here? And like, I'm just going to be like sitting behind a desk, pretending to edit. I'm not going to be able to see much or do much. It's kind of just going to be a stepping stone, and then I'll make my move. Yeah. And I ended up staying for almost 2 years because we had a lot to edit. They
kept you busy?
They kept me busy.
What resulted? Is the show still on, or what's it?
It's still airing. I've obviously since left. It's still airing. At the time, we're an award-winning show.
That's pretty big.
Yeah, it was awesome. It's awesome to put on a resume.
Yeah, probably you're like, I'm not gonna do too much in this.
But I have my award at home if you want to see it.
Perfect. I do, bring it in. We'll review it on the Gear and Beer Show, how cool the award is and everything, and what it feels like when I hold it. If I can do my acceptance speech and.
Definitely. Yeah, it was awesome. We did the whole Hollywood run. We went down to Beverly Hills. The whole crew and I just went down there. Got to meet like people from a bunch of different platforms. You had your Netflix, you had your Amazon Video, you had your Disney and stuff like that. And they're like,
all of a sudden from like a small town to the big leagues.
And what do you guys do? Oh, we pretty much did it all ourselves, and we're just a reality TV show that just people like, and
like, this is everybody.
Yeah,
this brought our whole crew.
This is us. Yeah.
And that's how you met Justin, right? Behind the camera doing all this was
behind the camera. Justin and I, he started off a little after I did, and he was one of the cameramen. I don't know. It's a world I didn't want to step in, being a cameraman.
You probably saw enough of it.
Yeah.
On screen as you're editing.
I was like, me editing is fine. I'm good. But Justin was a champion, and he was one of the guys just running down with people, getting yelled at, and doing the do.
Holding a huge camera, just
yeah, his little
cut.
Yeah, for I don't know if your viewers have seen him, but he's tiny little guy just running around. You never know. Big camera was bigger than him.
Probably, man.
I was like, I would see him come like offload some footage, and he just looked tired. And every time he's like, "Do you want to get a beer?" I'm like, "You need one, buddy." Yeah.
I got you one.
I got you.
So can you tell me what awards you won? I mean, if you're winning awards, I'm assuming the show's got some form of popularity to it, or
it was pretty popular. I can't recall how. I believe it was 73 different locations that we were being distributed at. We got picked up by Fox. So that was like
that's a pretty big deal.
That was pretty huge, and it was. I remember my dad shed like a little tear because it was like one of the Hollywood moments where the early on the first episode where my names came up on the credits. He recorded every episode.
Nice.
But he made sure that first episode I told him which one it was going to be, and he just saw my name right there pop up, and he had a little tear.
He's like, he did it.
He did it.
He didn't have to go to Hollywood.
He did it. He did it. All this money I spent. It's all worth it. Success. But yeah, we won the California On Location Award,
Wow.
which we competed against Jay Leno's Garage, and
No one knows what that is.
no one knows, but Jay Leno, I love your Garage.
He could be on the show if you want, Jay Leno. But I'll bring you a bottle of whiskey.
Yeah, you bring the cars. So
Yeah, you bring a car, we'll bring the whiskey.
Yeah.
Sure, he can afford a nicer bottle than I can, but hey, it's free.
It's free. It's free. Everyone says yes to free.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was, and I forgot what other show we competed at, but these were all like, even if you didn't watch the show, you knew about them, and then we were just sitting there, just like happy to be there, and then we get called up for a few awards, one as a collective, and another one for my boss for being the creator and stuff like that, and we're just like, oh, you see us just standing on stage, and it's funny because it's the same stage that like the Golden Globes happen at, and like me enjoying like film and stuff like that. I've seen a few of those, and I'm like, oh, dude, I'm here. Like, this is crazy. This is nuts. And
I made it from such a small town.
Yeah.
We're like 10 hours away from this place.
Yeah. They're like, oh, where are you guys? What studio are you guys filming with? Oh, like a tiny one in Main Street on.
I don't think you would know.
No, you wouldn't know us. Yeah.
Has that springboarded into anything?
So after the show, I moved. I ended up parting ways because I felt like, as much as I really enjoyed my time with the show and I loved editing for the show, I was like, oh, this isn't where I didn't picture me being an editor, content creator in California.
And how many? Sorry, like how many years or seasons were you there?
2 years, I think a little less than 2 years. I think it was like 3 or 4 seasons.
Okay.
I can't recall.
That's a lot of stuff, though.
I was involved with quite a bit, which is very nice.
A lot of experience, awards.
Yeah.
And you roll into.
I made the move to LA. I
finally go down there.
Yeah, I decided to
with
make
a little
it
bit of a reputation and an award, you know.
Yeah,
big deal.
A little like. Yeah, I didn't have
I've
to
been
be
there, done that.
I didn't have to be down here, but this is what I did. So yeah, I landed a spot at a production company, and I got to work on a few different things. A lot of it was more like advertising work, but we got hired to edit like on a few different like short films and like one. I was a part of like one big one that people may know, but. It was cool to just really go down. That was my plan. Yeah. That was my goal to get down there. And
was that a pretty, not like the living environment, but the editing environment? Was that like a drastic difference going from like it seems like a reality TV show to just doing short films to 1 or 2 assistant in major films?
It was different in the sense. So it was very similar because you're like. At the end of the day, like Justin and our other cameramen would come, and I would go through hours of footage, and really just condense it down to a 7-minute episode or something. So it's going through all of that and trying to figure out how to sort of entertain the audience was a big task, but it was pretty much once I went down there, it was sort of the same. You got handed a bunch. A lot of it was more scripted, and when you're down there, you have the luxury of people want to be actors.
They're everywhere.
People are paying for actors, so the effort is all there. So it becomes a little bit easier, but it was different in that regard that I got to be in a space where the craziness was sort of on purpose. Being up here and editing for the show, it was all just like you got to see that raw sort of wilderness vibe that how people can be
unscripted, untaught emotions.
Yeah, where you're just like, oh Jesus, and I mean, I got to know a few of the law enforcement that were on the show, and a few of my family members are part of the law enforcement that's here. So it's just funny to like share stories of what they seen, what I seen behind the lens, and sort of just like,
I know the story you're talking about. I watched it.
Yeah. It's like, we went, we raided this this huge like weed farm. I saw that.
Yeah.
I have the
got
footage
that for you.
Yeah, I'm working on that right now. Yeah. So that was kind of like the wild ride, but
yeah. So down in LA, short films, some bigger films, still kind of. It sounds like your feet are already pretty firmly planted underneath you with editing. Have you left LA? Are you still in LA?
I left LA. It was a lot of like, I went down there to sort of, I feel like it was something I needed to do, just dip my feet in those waters and see what it's like and get that experience. But at the end of the day, LA's kind of crazy. I was,
not buying it.
No one really believes it, but
You're not selling me on this.
Yeah. It was the everyone speaks on the traffic and all that jazz, but it was insane. I would be in traffic for like 3 hours a day, to the point where I'm like, I'm gonna like just lose it at one of these points. And when it came down to maybe like, okay, well, I can find a new place. Like my lease is ending. I can look for a new place where I can make my way somewhere else. I'm not tied down to anything. I had my fun. It was awesome to work down there. I would still go back, but at the time it was one of those things where I'm like, I can easily. I'm getting a little sick of everyone's like assholes. I'm like.
I almost still think that's putting it lightly.
Yeah. But, I mean, coming from a small town, I mean, even growing up like in Sacramento, I feel like that's a small city.
Yeah.
So I still got those sort of vibes, and then I went to college in a small town, so I was very much in that realm.
Small town to small town to small town.
Yeah, and then LA.
Yeah.
So it was one of those things where I was just like, yeah, I'm not really from here. So I decided to I made my way back up to Sacramento, and just sort of, it's going to be one of those things where it was a stepping stone. And then I was going to make my way up to maybe like Portland or Seattle.
Okay.
There's a big film scene in Vancouver. So I wanted to work my way up. And again, it was one of those things where I'm like, I'm young, I can do these things. I'm not tied down. So this would be fun. And then I got to SAC. I moved back to SAC, and I just without much effort, I landed a job that I really enjoyed at the time. I met my girlfriend, so I was like, all right, well,
bonus,
cool. Looks like I'm staying here for a while. So yeah,
like I'm on my way to Vancouver, but I guess I'll stop in Sacramento for a while.
I'll stay here, and been here ever
Close
since.
enough, right?
Been here ever since. I've then since swapped to my current job now, which is still I'm their in-house videographer, so I get to still create all the content I want. I'm pretty I do everything and lead every project that has video work, so I get to take charge and kind of put my stamp on any content we create on that in that realm.
That's really cool. So like small town to big city, still doing the same stuff, come back and you bring all this experience to a job where now you're like the guy in charge of, you get to say like, yes, good enough, or no, let's reshoot this, re-edit it, do something to make it better.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. We talked a little bit about kind of what this new job kind of entails, and I'm interested in that. So you get it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, you do a lot of work with disabled vets?
I do. Part of so the company I work for, it's called Pride Industries. We specialize in helping people with disabilities get jobs. So as a content creator, as a videographer, it's money for me, because I get to share people's stories about how someone who previously couldn't like be out in the workforce or be just even part of like regular society can now do that.
Yeah.
So
is it like video resumes, or like how does like almost like a content creator, video editor, professional guy in film help veterans get jobs?
So a lot of it is sharing their story of what their experience was, what they're capable of, what they've been able to do, sort of the barriers that they've gone through, which is something I'm like pretty proud of, that I've been able to make people happy, cry, on a regular basis, and a lot of it is it's very much that you just hear what they've gone through, and sort of the unfortunate bits that sometimes they do get disregarded, because no one really knows what you go through when you're in that space, and sometimes you come back with some stuff, without some stuff. There's a whole multitude of things that sort of stop you from living a normal life. So my company helps anyone get placement. They do the work that is done with this company is very unreal.
That's
awesome. It's a pleasure to be a part of. And then again, my part of it all is just helping display that to the rest of the world, and sharing the stories that they want to tell, and it's pretty great.
It's probably really impactful and powerful. Maybe things you've never heard of. Get those guys on the show, man. We want to do that. I'm gonna have a little bit more. I'll talk you up a little
please.
bit. I mean, we would love to get. I'm a veteran, and I would love to get more veterans on the show, more guys. Here talking, sharing stories, so people can see that there's a heartbeat behind the word veteran.
No, definitely, and I think that's always part of what we're trying to do, and I've because of all of this, I've been able to make relationships with not only vets, but again, we help anyone that needs help finding a job. We specialize and we promote that we help people with disabilities, but it's been nice to help see like the range of people that we get to help. And I've been able to make a relationship with quite a few vets, and just like either through interviewing them or just chatting afterwards, and getting to hang out with them, or like being on calls with them when we're just in big meetings and hearing their stories. It's pretty unreal. It was something I never did. It's something that really never interested me as kind of like the creator, a sort of that artist mentality where I just wanted to be free. It was never something that I really wanted to dive into, but it was something that I always had like a deep respect for. A bunch of my family members are part of that life, and it's always nice to hear, or it's nice and just like amazing to hear their stories. So when I found out I was going to be able to get the chance to do all of this and be the one to sort of stamp what's being said and have a visual say on how their story is being told, it was something I definitely jumped on board for. So
before you had this job, if you heard someone was a veteran or the word veteran, what was your definition of that? Like, what would come to mind when you think of like, oh, he's a veteran or he's in the military? Is there anything that you kind of like associate with that?
I think because of my my family, it would be like more badass.
Yeah.
But also like living in when I lived out in LA, and then my time in Sacramento, the sad bit is that sad is the word that came into mind at times because of the disregard that that happens from time to time, which is part of why I was like, I found this opportunity and I was like, all right, I gotta get this. I gotta be a part. I gotta be a part of.
Good for you.
Be a part of like this, and thankfully my work on the show was a big factor in helping me land this. Being an award winner, it comes.
I think it's maybe because there's more with cops. But,
No, so that was nice, and it was definitely something that like, I mean, and it was also during the times where there's a lot of heat on. There was and probably still is a lot of heat on law enforcement.
Yeah, that'll never go away. So
it was one of those things where, I mean, if you have an opportunity to share a story, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to be behind the scenes on a lot of things, a lot of people's stories. So if I have an opportunity to change people's minds, then I'm going to go for it.
But how has your mind been changed with what you associate with veteran and your definition now that you've like not only probably reconnected more with family that are veterans, but you've seen like behind the curtain and you've had personal relationships with veterans as helping them get jobs. You've had these like, off the clock conversations with them to be real candid and hearing stories and everything about these men and women. Has that changed any perspective you've had on what comes to mind when someone says, "Oh, I'm a veteran"?
Sort of. The badass bit still comes very much into play. That's immediately what I go toward, and especially since I see like firsthand what they're doing. I literally when I go into the office, the marketing department where I normally stay is upstairs, and all I have to do is go downstairs to some of our floors in our headquarters, and you get to see some of our vets just in action for whatever line of business that we have them on or they want to be a part of. You see them going, and it's pretty badass. And then I think part of my initial, before I like really cared to really know anything about vets, it was just one of those things where you're young, you hear, oh, and you gotta, like, if something happens, you're going to the Army. You're gonna be the first ones to go up there. I'm like,
they're shipping you out.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't want to be part of that life. And then you see some friends from high school go in that life, come back, and
shoot, what they do.
And then not even what they do. You just sort of see their like behavior, and it sometimes, especially when they're young, they have sort of like douchey behavior, and you're like, oh, this is what it's like. And then obviously once they get older, like some of them have seen or done some like real shit.
Yeah.
It becomes a whole different thing, and being able to sort of tell their story has really gotten me to see like what they do. And funny enough, my girlfriend's in the Air Force, so without much effort from my end, I've been sort of ingrained in this life.
Yeah.
And I get to see what she does.
You picked it in a different way.
Yeah. I get to see what she does, and like, I mean, she's still like serving her time, all that jazz. But the things she does and
serving her time, man, that's like a prison sentence. Hopefully she's liking it because she signed her name.
We're doing great.
Is it serving her time with you or serving her time? Dude, that's awesome. The job you have, which I don't know what company it is for, is, I think, really cool. There's so many vets and guys I know who, while I was in and even after getting out, who are like, man, I don't know what any of this work that I've learned translates to. And I sit there and I look at them and I'm like, dude, so many things. Like, you just got to kind of think outside the box, that all this discipline and these leadership skills and like conflict resolution and everything they teach you. You're basically a leader who's trained to think outside the box, no matter if you're an enlisted or if you're an officer. They're impacting you in the same way, forcing you to do things a certain way because it creates this mindset in you that most people don't have. But then they get locked into this like, oh, this is all I know. So you having a role in kind of helping them see that once they're out, especially for guys if they are disabled physically or mentally, emotionally, you can help fill roles in companies where it's like this guy could be a huge asset.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what our show's about, is kind of looking behind the curtain at our first responders and our military and our veterans, and bringing people in like you to talk about these companies and companies that are veteran owned or mainly hire veterans, or they want to impact veterans and first responders. That's what our show's about too.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of what you said is pretty spot on, to what a lot of our vets close to my department say, as far as like we go out and try to get other vets jobs, is maybe you worked on planes when you were serving, and but don't look at it as far as working on planes. Look at it as far as like, this is how disciplined you were to learn this craft. This is how well you can follow orders, how you can be part of a system and stuff like that. But while still being your own person, and part of it is it's crazy.
Yeah.
Which is nice. And again, like if any vets want to reach out, the amount of work we do, again, it's called Pride Industries. And
we'll put a link to that here. Hopefully, as we get this kind of sent out, some guys can take you up on it.
Yeah, I would love to. Some of the vets, some of the guys that I've been able to work with, come share their story here, because it's really something. And for the most part, again, not to continually boast about my job, is like the work
that's what we're here for, to let you boast about you. That's what Whiskey Wednesdays is, a show where you can boast about yourself.
Nice. Well, yeah, the work that they do is pretty killer. It's awesome.
That's really cool. I think you're right. I think, it's not just about taking instruction and being able to figure it out, but it's a lot of times, you get trained into a leadership position, and then you're forced to take a really complex problem that's given to you and then explain it into simple terms so that the people beneath you can figure out how to accomplish a task.
Yeah.
So it's not just like orders. It's like, hey, here's a problem. This is everything involved with the problem we need to fix. And then you have these guys that can look at that and go, okay, I know who I'm talking to. I know what level I got to talk it down to, and then they'll take it, talk down to the next, and not really dumb it down, but just simplify it so it's easy to understand and go to work. And then that translates immensely into business, into marketing, into anything. And most people don't even recognize that.
Yeah, no, because you definitely see their capabilities, because a lot of the times, for them it's harder just because they're just, whoever's employing them just sees them as high risk, possibly because of maybe they've gone through trauma without even speaking to the person properly. But the moment they're able to get past that barrier and actually be on the field and do what they're hired to do, it's pretty gnarly to see what.
That's awesome, man. Thanks for sharing all this. I know you probably got a phone call from Justin with very little information. It was just like, hey, you want to be on this show and just talk? And you showed up and were like, what are we doing? Like, do you kind of feel like your questions were answered while you're on the show?
Yeah.
About what we're doing?
Yeah, it's always happy to be a part of anything that Justin wants me to be a part of. Funny.
Maybe not knowing what you just stepped into.
Yeah, with him, I sort of have a ballpark, but it's fun to have what I've done help out in in different ways and
Yeah.
be something I could talk about for sure.
Yeah, and we were talking before we kind of got filming. I don't know if I answered your question, but like long term, hopefully not too long of an answer, with kind of how Justin and I wanted to bring light to veterans and first responders. Kind of was a distant thought we had of how to do a show. The immediate thought, which will resonate with a lot of first responders and veterans, was, hey, how can we stop buying beer and get it for free? And so I know Justin, and I know he's in with all this video stuff, so I pitched him this idea for a show called Gear and Beer, which turned into the Gear and Beer Show, which is like, I would almost say the parent company of Whiskey Wednesdays. And first 4 episodes, pre-COVID, didn't even air anything, pitched the idea to 4 companies. We got free beer. It was looking great. Shows were awful. So bad that they never aired. COVID happens, and we're like, dude, we need to take a break. All the breweries that we were talking to said they're all kind of closing the doors for a little bit and just doing like store orders and stuff. So come into COVID, Justin's like, hey, let's kick the show back off. So we kick it off. Still just, hey, let's just see if we can get free beer again. Maybe this time we'll see if we can test and review any gear and be like a show that sends feedback to companies. And that has not happened yet at all. We're buying everything, buying beer, having a blast. But it led into logistical nightmares of getting a bunch of guys on a couch talking about gear that we test and then sit in the studio and drink beer. I mean, you probably know from being higher up and having people work under you that just getting them, like a couple of them to do one thing is difficult. And we got to do...
And you got to do that with booze.
Yeah. Oh,
involved.
Yeah. With alcohol, which we thought would be like the easy draw, which is not the easy draw. And then trying to figure out, is this all going to be done in 1 day, in 2 days? How many times are we going to do this? So Justin and I were like, dude, we need something easy in between all these shows. So we came up with Whiskey Wednesdays, where now we get to do this. And it was still even more broad. And we pitched it to one of the guys on the Gear and Beer Show. Like, hey, why don't you sit down with us and we'll have a glass of whiskey and just talk. He's a firefighter, so he starts sharing some stories of scary times on calls that he's had to what I think most people would call hazing. I would just call, welcome to the team environments.
Welcome to the jungle.
Yeah. And it was like, I would say anywhere from 10 to 18 minutes long, real short. And we're like, this is going to be perfect. We have another guy come on the show who's a guitarist, and he starts talking about, how life is as a musician, as an artist, and we have one glass of whiskey together, and the next thing you know, he's talking about how he was selling drugs to the cartel when he was younger, working in the oil fields, and we were like, this show just took a turn. And that was like 33 minutes. Pitched it to a guy who was a former firefighter, entrepreneur. That was like an hour and a half episode. Came out really awesome. And then the next person was like almost an hour, and then we have an hour and a half. And then so we're like, let's just do an open platform of maybe 2 hours, and anywhere in between, whatever people want to talk. That'll be the length of the episode. Just naturally let it run its course, and when it's over, it's over. And then still open-ended, and then we kind of got Sam Paredes on Whiskey Wednesdays, and he's the Gun Owners of California guy fighting for our Second Amendments. And he, being out there fighting for rights, he came to us and said, hey, I want to find a way to sponsor the show. Maybe I can help you guys get gear. That's about what I can do, is maybe get you some FaceTime. And we were like, oh, yeah. So we have Gun Owners of California in our corner helping us get both shows out. And then we have this guy, Chuck Ferry, come to us and say, hey, I want to sponsor the show and help it be geared towards veterans, first responders, and like not just cops and firefighters, but nurses, anybody who's kind of out there active duty, inactive, or out there, saving lives or fighting for the rights of people, which is the direction we wanted to take it, but just we're like, let's just keep it open-ended and kind of see where it goes, keep it broad, and it's just naturally...
It doesn't close you off.
Yeah.
It lets you...
It's naturally found its way to where we wanted without us having to get it there, and we're both kind of like, this is insane. And then Justin was talking to you, and you're now on the show, and we're like, hey, this is linking up with still the veteran first responder realm, and it's It is crazy where it's going. Because our whole goal is to, like, humanize the badge, like, let people know that, you know, cops aren't out there just doing bad things like they're portrayed on the news. The majority of us want to be out there serving our country at home. There are men and women behind the badge that their hearts beat, they bleed like everybody else, they have the same emotions. There's a ton of hardships that come with the job. There's difficulties in every aspect of the job that I do and they do every day, not just police and firefighters, but nurses, military, and we want to kind of shed a light onto these stories that a lot of people don't get to say, and then also shed a light on to motivate them to show that, you know, there are guys who served, who took that service and turned it into a career after they got out, not just like getting out or getting injured and being medically discharged and now what? Like, there's guys that started companies, there's guys that have made it into their dream jobs that they didn't know were their dream jobs till they got out. And you're a huge part of that. I mean, we may be doing it on the podcast side, but now talking to you, it's like you're the one who's actually sitting there face to face, talking with them, getting their story and being like, hey, we can gear you into this job. What do you think?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're seeing them get emotional and cry over some things you've been able to help them steer into career-wise, you're killing it.
Yeah, and it's been funny. It's one of those things that I, to be honest, I never thought I was going to get into. I like any youth, I was never in that space where, like, growing up I had direct relatives in either the armed forces or part of our like police or anything like that. It wasn't until later on, once I got into the space that I am in now, that that everyone started doing their work for what they're doing now. So I never really cared, to be honest. I was just in a different. I had my own things to worry about. I was just in the realm of please don't pull me over. But also, like, you start hearing all these headlines that are pretty tragic, and part of it is like, all right, well, there's always two sides. I'm a firm believer in that. There's always two sides, and then it just so happens that I got to be in a field where I can share people's stories, and a lot of the people's stories who I'm sharing are people in this space who normally didn't have a voice. It was just you work for us. You're put in this line of fire because you want to be. So just keep doing what you're doing, and screw you for being the bad guy. And obviously that isn't the case with everyone. There's bad eggs everywhere you go, unfortunately. But to be able to sort of give the happy version of and the nice bits of what the majority see is pretty great. And yeah, like I've been able to, one of the main companies that we work for and do business with, they're veteran owned, and they primarily focus on hiring veterans as well, and they're an extension of our company. We help them a lot. Really so a lot of like the people that we've gotten to work with are the vets that we've that have come our way. We've directed them their way, and everyone wins, because at the end of the day, you just kind of you want to be a part of society. Do what you need to do to make your money, live your life, be happy. Sometimes your background goes in whatever direction. Mm-hmm. Sometimes good, sometimes bad, but at the end of the day, that gets you to do good in the world. And
I don't think many people, and maybe even some active duty folks, I don't think they really understand how hard it is to kind of like assimilate and form back into society after being in that world. It's a challenge, and I think it's a challenge a lot of veterans face in some, I can imagine. I mean, it was nerve-wracking for me to get out and think, like, am I going to get a job? Am I going to be successful? Am I going to leave the job I know? And that's scary. And then there's some guys that are like, I'm just going to do it and it's going to be totally fine. And they see it for what it really is, like head on. They're like, this is not as easy as I thought. I thought, you know, having this veteran thing behind me, because maybe they're in a family that really supported it, or in a community that like loved their vets, like, oh, it's going to be easy to get back into society. And they come back and everything's different, or they're not coming back to the same town that they left. It's like, oh, it's not so easy to get a job. It's not so easy to talk about what I did in the service and let this company know that I'll be able to work for them because I've done it, because we are kind of speaking two different languages, and it's almost like relearning how to talk about what I did with the right context to put in the lap of a business or of whatever. So, I mean, hats off to you for being out there and letting us know. I mean, I'm thankful. I'm a veteran. I'm thankful for what you're doing, helping other veterans get out and be able to get jobs, letting kind of the veteran community and the active duty community know there are companies out there that are civilians who, like you, have never served in any form but are willing to sit with them to take the job that they did in the military, the skills that they've left equipped with, and turn that into a functioning career to where they don't have to sit there potentially depressed, potentially angry with the world, and thinking that there's nothing they can do. Yet there's people out there every day looking for them to help them, and it's nonprofit. So that's another big thing. Yeah,
it's it's again, it's pretty unreal the sort of work we do.
And you're happy to do it.
Yeah,
it's another big thing.
Well, when you say you work for a nonprofit, and pretty much in general, everyone's like, yeah, you do some pretty nice things.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, thankfully I do, and it's worked out for me in a way that I can be as creative as I want to be while still helping people in whatever form it is. And again, it wasn't anything that I really like sort of actively jumped into, but after being a part of the show, after hearing everyone's story, you can't help but just like really be on board with, like, yeah, dude, you put, whether you went that far or not, you put yourself on the line. For whatever reason, but you put yourself on the line, and then to come back and it not work out for you the way it should, is kind of a tragedy. But for me, to be able to be a part of something, a company that really paves the way in helping not just vets but anyone kind of get their life back on track, or be a part of society the way they should be is pretty awesome.
Well, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
I just want to say cheers to you. Let's put a little, just one last sip, man. I got to cheers you on the way.
Yeah.
There we go.
Cool.
Christian, cheers to you. Thank you for serving those that selflessly serve their country and being a part of their lives.
Thank you for serving, and thank you for having me.
Thank you.